What's going on, and welcome back to another episode of Battle in the Trenches presented by Climb the Pocket. It is week 5, and we are here to give you all of your starts and sits to help you win your fantasy football matchup this week. My name is Steve, and as always, I'm with my fellow Climb the Pocket compadre, Ryan. What's going on, man?
Fantasy-wise, struggling, Steve. I've gone through my weeks, and I've had one major injury after another. I lost Cortland Sutton week 1, Saquon week 2. Diontae Johnson got concussed week 3. He'll be back this week. And this might have been the final blow to my fantasy football team. I lost Nick Chubb this week. Things are poor. Things are poor on the fantasy front. But my birds, my Philadelphia Eagles, are in first place. They're head and feet above the competition in the NFC East. We're obviously the greatest team of all time at 1-2-1, and things are looking up. That's the last real memory of football I have at this point. So I'm excited to get a clean slate, win this week, and be 1-0 every week for the rest of time with our start sits. And I'm sure you've got great guys that you want to start and sit. Hopefully they're not the remains of my fantasy team that you want to sit. Hopefully they're in your lineup this week.
Yeah, fantasy football can be a ruthless game, but we are here to help you along the journey. If you are new to the channel, subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it. We are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. It's going to be a huge milestone for us, and we really want you a part of the team, a part of the family. So subscribe now if you like the video. Also, like the video. It helps us get more known on YouTube, help recommend it to people who are searching fantasy football. We really appreciate that. And as always, comment all of your start sit, fantasy football questions, trade questions, sit, drop advice, anything. We got you. We will answer every single question. We're here for the people. We're here to help you win your fantasy football championships, dominate your league. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video and start them out with the stardom quarterbacks. I usually start it off, but let's hand it off to Ryan to give us his 2 start quarterbacks for this week.
This could be the game changer for my week. Starting Jared Goff against the Washington football team. I mean, the football team is fine. It's like the most bland team in the NFL right now. There's not a whole lot there, but I do think this is a get-it-right kind of game for Jared Goff. They struggled a little bit with the New York Football Giants, unrelated to the football team, and the weapons are too good for them to not look good. I think he's a safe floor guy, so Jared Goff firmly in the lineup. I'm also starting somebody that I do not like generally as a quarterback, but he's kind of making me eat my words a little bit this year, and that's Derek Carr. I'm starting him against the Kansas City Chiefs. For some odd reason, he seems to have success against them. He plays well against the Kansas City Chiefs, and they're going to need to throw the ball there. It's going to be tough for the Las Vegas Raiders to stay in this game, and the only way they can do that is if they keep up with the points. So I think Derek Carr's a fine start this week, especially if you've been treading water with Carson Wentz.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd ever hear those words out of your mouth. Derek Carr, start on your fantasy football team. But hey, the bye weeks are here. A couple teams on bye this week, so you might need a replacement for a guy like Aaron Rodgers or something. So consider Derek Carr. Moving on to my start quarterbacks, I'm starting Kirk Cousins against Seattle. And there's not much more to say besides Seattle is not a very good defense. They're allowing the 3rd most points. 2 quarterbacks in fantasy football, over 325 yards passing, with around 3 touchdowns per game to that quarterback. So those are very good numbers, and Kirk Cousins is certainly capable, especially with new Justin Jefferson on the rise, a weapon that wasn't very present week 1 and 2, but a couple 100-yard games back-to-back for Justin Jefferson. I really like him this week, possibly to go for over 100 yards again and possibly a score. I think he'll be one of those 3 touchdowns. So throw Kirk Cousins in your lineup and feel pretty confident about a pretty safe floor for you. My second start quarterback, I'm going with Teddy Bridgewater against Atlanta, and I kind of handpicked both pretty good quarterback matchups, Seattle and Atlanta. Atlanta's defense is just in shambles, man. They're losing guys in their secondary every single game and giving up a lot of passing yards, 275 plus passing yards per game. Atlanta has given up 4 passing touchdowns in 3 of 4 games. That's a lot of touchdowns. If Teddy Bridgewater can have his best performance here and pass for 4 touchdowns, it's going to be such a locked-on stream, and you're going to be very happy you have him in your fantasy football lineup. We're just waiting for that day when DJ Moore comes around and scores some touchdowns, and I'm thinking it might be this game. So Teddy Bridgewater for 3 or 4 touchdowns. I'm not going to lock it, but it's definitely a possibility. So feel good about streaming Teddy B this week at Atlanta. Let's go ahead and move on to the sit quarterbacks. I'll start this one off and go with Ryan Tannehill versus Buffalo. Coming off that COVID bye week, they're going to be kind of not really in the groove of things like they were. They hit that bye week a little early. And, A.J. Brown's going to be back, but his number one option, how productive is he going to be coming off that week, a couple week bone bruise? It's going to be tough, and he's going to be against Tre'Davious White. That's going to be a tough matchup, and Ryan Tannehill is going to have to look other ways. I don't know if Corey Davis is really a great fantasy option for him, or just a regular NFL option to look towards. It's going to be a tough matchup. Jonnu Smith will certainly be available, but I don't know if I'm looking to stream Ryan Tannehill this week. I think I look other ways for my quarterback. And my second sit quarterback is Baker Mayfield versus Indianapolis. Now, every other week besides last week, I would probably have the same opinion, and that's why he's back in the sit column this week. He played Dallas last week, and their defense is just horrendous. The show is probably going to turn into the roast Dallas defense show. But Baker Mayfield, I still don't think he's that great of a quarterback. Even last game against Dallas, we saw OBJ and get it done on the ground. We saw Jarvis Landry toss a touchdown. He didn't really have like an insane game like we thought he would maybe, and Cleveland wants to run the ball. They're going to be a run-first offense that ran for over 300 yards against Dallas. I think they try to bring that same game against Indianapolis, who is the number one defense against quarterbacks, so they're going to look to go to the ground. I think Baker was a stream last week. I think he goes back to the waiver wire this week if I'm your fantasy football team. Who are you setting at quarterback, Ryan?
A little sidebar. You see Jarvis Landry threw the football left-handed, but he throws a baseball right-handed.
Yep.
That's absurd. Like I don't understand how people can be more athletic than me with both hands. Like
he didn't look like that athletic throwing the ball. Like he did. It looked kind of not like it looks like he's not a lefty, but he threw it deep. It was a perfect pass.
That thing was a seed.
Yeah.
I'm sure if you gave him like 15 chances at that, like he wouldn't have a better throw than that throw. That throw was beautiful.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting Big Ben against Philadelphia. It's a tough matchup. I'm not going to lie. The Eagles lead the league in sacks. They are pretty good in the air, honestly, defensively. It's where they've been the best. They've limited some bad quarterbacks kind of to bad games. So it's going to be a big-time test for the Eagles. Darius Slay's been huge. He's held I think he's averaging 35 yards a game defensively. So that it's been everything that they've wanted in a lockdown corner. I expect him on Juju. So Big Ben, there's safer options at quarterback. I'm also sitting at face value. This sit feels like what are you saying? This is a slam dunk sit, but I know fantasy players out there are thinking about tinkering Danny Dimes into their lineup against the Dallas Cowboys. Just don't do it. I understand there might be high upside there. The Cowboys defense has topped out on ESPN at 0 fantasy points for their defense and special teams. The other 3 games, they have been negative. I understand how bad the Cowboys defense has been. The NFC East, it's a little bit different of a breed. I think it's going to be less of a shootout. It's going to be more of a chess match. Just don't put Danny Dimes in. He's a turnover machine, and they can't get that offense right without Saquon there. So I'm sitting Big Ben and Danny Dimes.
Yeah, I could see that being like a get-right game for the Cowboys. They go out ahead, and then Danny Dimes is just trying to come back, and maybe the Cowboys defense kind of steps it up because they actually have a lead.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a possibility for sure. So sit Danny Dimes. Moving on to the running back position. Start running back 1 for me is David Johnson versus Jacksonville. Hey, David Johnson, not the highest ceiling, but he's providing a pretty safe fantasy football floor for you. And he's going against Jacksonville, who just gave up 42 PPR points to Joe Mixon, an absolute heyday. I mean, Joe Mixon's breakout game of the year. People were down on him, selling him, but here he's back. He clearly got a lot of volume, and it was able to come against Jacksonville. So kind of ride that. You can ride David Johnson right into that. I think it's going to have a pretty good game. Probably find the end zone at least once. Jacksonville allowing the 7th most rushing/receiving touchdowns, or just touchdowns in general, to running backs this season. So that's a pretty good stat to be able to go into that game and think he's going to get in the end zone pretty confidently. So I'm starting David Johnson. My second start, Jerrick McKinnon versus Miami. Now, if Raheem Mostert comes back, I'm still starting Jerrick McKinnon. I have him here no matter what, not even considering the Raheem Mostert play. Jerrick McKinnon has done enough to be a firm part of this offense. He has scored a touchdown in each of the first 4 games, and not saying he's going to score a touchdown every game, but I don't see his production stopping. Certainly, he got 14 touches on the ground the last 2 games. I think he will definitely lose some of those to Raheem Mostert if he's back, but I think he's going to continue to be involved in the passing game and possibly around the goal line and on the ground. I think he'll probably still get 8 to 10 rush attempts per game, and then probably 4, 5, 6 targets possibly in the passing game. As they got Deebo Samuel back, George Kittle, so he's going to lose a little bit in the passing game. But I like Jerrick McKinnon as a standalone play. It kind of reminds you of that Cleveland offense with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, a couple of guys that can continue to get it done every week. I know Nick Chubb's injured, but just using them as an example, I like Jerrick McKinnon this week versus Miami. Who are you starting at running back?
So they're kind of weird plays. I'm starting Devin Singletary. He's coming off a not great game, honestly. I think he averaged 3.2 yards a carry, give or take, in a game where you feel like he probably could have averaged more. But he's playing against Tennessee, and I think that this game's going to be a chess match type of game where both teams kind of feel each other out for field position. And Devin Singletary has been their lead back the last year and some change. Zach Moss isn't 100%, and Singletary should be the lead guy in this game. I think he sees enough touches to where he's a startable player. I'd prefer him in the flex, but with all the running back injuries, if he's your running back too, he's a fine play. I'm also starting Antonio Gibson against the Rams, where he's going to have to be involved heavily in the pass game because I don't see Washington up at all. Honestly, I don't see them being an effective offense. Dwayne Haskins is kind of close to his last straw. I think he's going to need to play a sound football game, and getting the ball to Antonio Gibson, probably the second best weapon on that offense behind Terry McLaurin, is how they need to stay in the game. So Antonio Gibson's a great PPR play this week.
Yeah, definitely. Antonio Gibson had a very good game last week, so riding that out. My first sit running back is Myles Gaskin for the Miami Dolphins going against San Francisco. San Francisco is locked and loaded. They got Kittle back. They got Deebo Samuel back. They're going to score some points. Raheem Mostert comes back. They're going to score points. And San Francisco is tough to running backs on the ground. They're giving up 55 rush yards per game. That is not good. I don't see Myles Gaskin having a great game unless he breaks off some sort of big play, maybe finds the end zone once or twice, and I really don't see that happening against this team. So sit Myles Gaskin. I'm also sitting Melvin Gordon against New England. What does Bill Belichick do best? That's take away your best player. And I think Melvin Gordon is the best player right now on the Denver Broncos, so I think they're going to have a scheme to stop the run game. They've only given up 1 rush touchdown this year, and Melvin Gordon played the Jets last week, so that big performance, I don't know if I would ride it into this game against New England. So I'm going to sit Melvin Gordon. It's not going to be easy, especially if you don't have better replacements. You might have to play him in your RB2 slot or your flex spot, but temper your expectations for Melvin Gordon. Who are you sitting at running back?
Yeah, I'm sitting the Rams running backs. Last week felt like a Darrell Henderson smash start, and he disappeared. I don't know what happened to him. Malcolm Brown's still there, and he's pesky. And Cam Akers is coming back this week, so I don't know what to make of this backfield currently. I have Cam Akers waiting in the wings on my bench. I'm waiting for my Darrell Henderson start game with Cam Akers. I hope it happens soon with how my team is laid out. So I'm sitting the Rams running backs. I'm also sitting David Montgomery against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay ate up Josh Kelly, 9 carries for 7 yards. And David Montgomery's a similar running back in my eyes to Josh Kelly. I don't see him getting a whole lot done on the ground. The Bears still don't have a rushing touchdown. I drafted David Montgomery as my running back 3. He's now my running back 1. I have to play him. But if you've got better options than Demont this week, please play them because it's going to be a rough one for him.
Yeah, definitely. Dave Montgomery, not the guy we all thought we were drafting. But hey, if that's what you got, that's what you got. Let's move on to the wide receiver position. And starting first for me, that's Robby Anderson at Atlanta. Teddy Bridgewater's favorite target? I think so. 1 yard away last week from starting 3 of his first 4 games with 100 receiving yards. That's really good, a lot better than people expected when drafting Robby Anderson in the later rounds of their drafts. Clearly has a slightly better chemistry with Teddy Bridgewater than he does with DJ Moore. So this is really good news for Robby Anderson. Going against that depleted Atlanta defense we mentioned earlier, I think that Robby Anderson has another pretty good week, possibly a huge boom week where Robby goes for 150 and a touchdown. Not going to lock it, but it's a huge possibility this week. So I think you're going to want to put Robby Anderson in your lineup. My second start wide receiver, Cooper Kupp at Washington. Now, Washington does have a pretty good defense, but I kind of like what Cooper Kupp has been doing the last couple of weeks. He's getting pretty heavily targeted over the last 2 weeks, 8 targets per game. So that's good to see. Him and Goff are, picking up where they left off towards the first half of the last season. I think Goff's going to look his way a lot. I think they're going to get a lot of pressure on him. Washington's going to get a lot of pressure on Jared Goff, and I think he's going to look for Cooper Kupp as his fallout option. Like I said, gaining a lot of chemistry. I think Cooper Kupp has a pretty decent game, 75 yards, maybe 5-6 catches, and possibly a score. So I think you're going to want to have him in your lineup against Washington. Who are you sitting at wide receiver?
Well, you got to start some guys first, Steve.
Who are you starting at wide receiver?
Yeah. Well, I'm starting the counterpart to your Robby Anderson. I'm starting DJ Moore. This feels like a get-right game for DJ Moore. Atlanta is hurt on defense. It's not looking too hot for the Atlanta Falcons defensively. I don't like them at all, actually, defensively. So DJ Moore, smash start. I'm also starting Diontae Johnson against the Eagles. I know I told you to sit Ben Roethlisberger. I like how Diontae plays. I think he's going to get matched up, not against Darius Slay, but against Jalen Mills. And that's going to be barbecue chicken for Diontae Johnson. I think Diontae Johnson has a chance to finish as a top 10 wide receiver this week if the matchups are what I think they are and Juju sees Darius. So Diontae Johnson is a smash play for me, and he's going to have a game similar to Tyler Boyd against the Eagles a couple weeks ago and just eat their lunch.
Yeah, I like that comp. I think they play pretty similar. So definitely put Diontae in your lineup. Let's go move on to the sit wide receivers. I'll start it off. Jarvis Landry for the Cleveland Browns going against Indianapolis. Kind of piggybacks my Baker Mayfield take earlier. Dallas game, kind of a fluke for a lot of these Cleveland players. They ran the ball a lot. OBJ's game wasn't really all through the air. Did a lot of work on the ground and whatnot. And Jarvis Landry found the end zone, but only has 2 games with 5 receptions this year. Certainly not someone we can trust in our starting lineup. And like I said, Cleveland wants to run the ball a lot. I think Jarvis Landry's days of being a huge part of this offense like he was last year are slightly in the rear view. So you can't trust him until he gains a larger role in this offense right now. Going against Indianapolis, very good against wide receivers. So I'm putting Jarvis back on the bench. AJ Green is my second wide receiver sit. This might be the last week we actually feature him because he's pretty much getting phased out of that offense. Joe Burrow clearly trusts Tyler Boyd a little more. AJ Green's just not the same guy that we've seen in the past, a fantasy football superstar. He's not even really serviceable right now. Just last week, 1 catch, 3 yards. And he's going against Baltimore this week, and their defense is nasty, especially that secondary. So I'm not starting A.J. Green. I'm looking elsewhere. I'd rather take a flyer on a guy on the waiver wire than start A.J. Green in my lineup. So sitting A.J. Green. Who are you sitting?
I'm sitting Michael Gallup. It's tough to do, but he seems like the wide receiver left out. Don't know why. I think he just isn't getting featured the way he should be. And I'm not starting him until I'm confident in him, and I don't know how confident I'm going to be in him all year, just based on the fact that CeeDee Lamb is more than what was advertised. Amari Cooper has his big games, and Dak's throwing for 450 yards, and Gallup's having non-factor games. So it's tough to see for Michael Gallup. He's much more talented than the stat line showing, but I'm sitting him this week. I'm also sitting 49ers wide receivers. There's no guarantee that Jimmy G's back this week. I think he will be, but there's obviously setbacks that could happen. And if you've got a struggling Nick Mullins or CJ Beathard, as your quarterback. It's not great looks. So it's going to be a big Kittle game. It's going to be a big run game. They're playing the Dolphins. It's kind of get in there, get the win the easiest way possible. Don't make it too crazy. I don't think they'll be throwing outside very, very frequently to where you're confident with who you're starting. So sitting all 49ers wide receivers.
Okay. Let's move on to the tight ends. My first start tight end is Evan Engram against Dallas. I know you said sit Danny Dimes. It doesn't mean someone in the offense can't have a good game. The Cowboys are allowing over 65 yards a game and just under a touchdown to tight ends, and I think Evan Engram is one of the more talented tight ends in the league, so I think he can definitely get that done and get in the end zone and find himself getting 65 receiving yards. The Giants are going to have to go somewhere with the football against Dallas's bad defense. I do think Dallas, leads in this game and pretty good, and the Giants are going to have to come back with some garbage time. I think he's going to be a major piece of that. I think Danny Dimes is going to look for him when that defense kind of goes in a little prevent. I like Evan Engram this week against Dallas. My second start wide receiver is Alie Cox versus Cleveland for the Indianapolis Colts. Only 4 teams are worse at defending tight ends this year. They're allowing 12 points per game. 2 fantasy tight ends. So that's pretty good from Alie Cox. Even last game in a down game, he was able to find the end zone, kind of salvage his day on fantasy football. Certainly not what we like to see, but I think that Alie Cox is going to continue to be a part of this offense. And like I said, Cleveland, this is kind of the spot where you want to exploit him. I think Phillip Rivers is going to look for him this game. Going to see 5 to 6 targets, another end zone shot. So I like Alie Cox. Who are you starting at tight end?
Yeah, well, I'm starting your boy that had a little bit of a down week last week. Tyler Higbee against the Washington football team. I think that they're going to spread the ball around evenly in a game where they're just going to maybe just refine their craft as a football team against the football team. I expect Tyler Higbee to be in that 5 to 7 target area. Hopefully he catches 5 of them. He goes over 60 yards and scores, and you go home happy because they won easily. I think it's going to be one of those type of games where they just make sure everything works correctly in the offense, and I think that's a big start for Tyler Higbee. I'm also starting Rob Gronkowski against the Chicago Bears. Everybody on the offense that catches passes besides Rob Gronkowski missed practice today. It doesn't say a whole lot for their game time availability. I think the only one who misses the game is Chris Godwin. But it's not great when Mike Evans and Scotty Miller miss time as well. So I think Gronk's going to be slightly featured. It's still obviously an offense that runs through Mike Evans. So Gronkowski's a fine play. I think he finally gets in the end zone.
All right, let's cap it off and sit those tight ends. I'm sitting Hayden Hurst versus Carolina. Hayden Hurst, we just, one game over double-digit fantasy points. He's certainly seeing the targets from Matt Ryan, 5 targets in each of the first 4 games, which is great. But he's just not getting it done. And until we can see him get it done multiple weeks in a row, he's not someone you can really trust as your fantasy starter unless this is really all you got. If you went late tight end and it didn't work out, maybe he's your best option, certainly. But he's just not able to cash in. Matt Ryan is struggling. Opposing tight ends against Carolina have scored just 1 TD and have failed to top 50 receiving yards. Low key though. All right, we got nuggets. All right, so Hayden Hurst might not be the best option if you think Carolina's defense is bad. They are on the ground. They're better in this category. Moving on, my second sit tight end, and that's Mike Gesicki. This feels wrong because he did me dirty that one time when I sat him, and man, he came in huge. It was his best game of the year, but 3 or 4 games with no more than either 30 receiving yards or 3 receptions. It's tough. The last 2 games, 1 catch for 15 yards. That's tough. It's tough to put that in your lineup, and until, kind of like Hayden Hurst, until we see him as a larger part of this offense consistently, I don't know if you can confidently throw Mike Gesicki in. You're more so just throwing that dart. You can definitely get a bust each week like last week and the week before, or you can have that huge boom week. It's all about what you want in fantasy football. And
sure.
I don't know if I want that. I think I want a little more consistency week to week until I see it happen. So I'm sitting Mike Gesicki. Cap it off. Who are you sitting?
Yeah, I'm sitting Dalton Schultz against the Giants. They've been pretty solid against tight ends, actually, which I guess is because they're getting gashed everywhere else. So it's going to be a grinded-out game for both teams. I don't expect Dalton Schultz to be a big-time fantasy producer this week. I'm also sitting Kyle Rudolph against Seattle. Rudolph only does his damage in the red zone. I think Seattle's defense understands that. I don't think they're going to let Kyle Rudolph get open. I think that it's going to be a tough game for Minnesota, and I don't see Rudolph getting in the end zone, and that's the only way you would start him is if he finds pay dirt. So sit Kyle Rudolph.
There you have it. All of your starts and sits for the quarterback, the running back, the wide receiver, and the tight end for Week 5 in fantasy football. You are going to get a win this week. Follow our advice. We really appreciate you checking out the channel. Subscribe if you like the content. We want to get to 1,000 people, and we're almost there. Maybe we'll crack a little giveaway when we get to 1,000. Who knows? Subscribe to the channel. Find out. Like the video. Spread this video around. Comment all of your start-sit questions. We are going to help you win your week this week, whether it's by watching the video or dropping a comment and me and Ryan answering those questions. We want you to get a W. We want to get W's. Winning in fantasy football is fun. We will see you in Week 6. Good luck, everyone. Peace out.